youth between the age of 18 to 24, only 53% voted in the last federal election.
They're not feeling like the politicians are representative of them.
Do politicians want high polling?
Do politicians want 18 to 24-year-olds to vote? Your grandma or grandfather may have wanted to, and they would have been rejected at the polling station, right? You are the other.
So imagine you being 18 to 24 and being told you cannot vote. How would you feel? So when you force somebody to vote, that cannot be real.
We are a growing economy. We need people.
We need young people.
I think at that age, you're not really thinking about healthcare. You're probably healthy, so you're not worried about that.
How do we change their mindset? So Perminder, actually don't get nervous, but having you sitting right next to me today, making me a tad bit nervous. Not so much, but a little bit. So I've been thinking, not telling you, but I've been thinking, how do I introduce you? A successful lawyer, a professional, a socialite that everybody wants to get known in this city right now, my brother, or somebody who had struggles in his life, and maybe the audience wants to know a little bit about of your struggles that you may want to share, or may not. I don't know. Putting you on the spot. So I don't know how much you want to share and how much you don't want to share.
Well, those are really kind words, brother. And when you hear it being said about yourself, it's usually humbling, because you just sort of wake up and do what you think is best to do in a day, right? Your work, your family, your kids, your friends, your family, right? What makes me wake up every day is to just do good, which is sort of what my dad taught me to do, right? Do good for the world, do good for yourself, do good for your family. That's what motivates me. And I suppose some success has come with that. Good karma, those kind of things. I believe deeply in karma. My family they were good people, and they taught me to do good things. Never rip anybody off, and just do your best. And that's what continues to be the reason for what I'm doing.
But deep inside, you're very different, and I find that your struggles in life and the hard work that you have to do to come to where you are should be used as inspiration.
Because we feeling your vibe, I know your struggles, you know mine, and when our mind goes to that, like right now, I'm gonna throw it to you. When I see you and I see you sitting here with me, I know your stories that come from being in the basement suite.
Yeah.
Right? The basement suite is the origins of Garry Sangha. I know you think about that a lot, right?
Yeah, actually, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm going to say what is in my mind. You often talk about, your mom had to be working in hotels and room service, and your dad being a courier, and you being brought up in a small little house in Wally, from there to rising to the star you are today. What is the message that you wanna give to youth?
To youth, yeah. Look, often what I say to young people, young lawyers in my firm, is find the chip on your shoulder. Like, really find the thing that motivates you. For me, it was literally those things. Knowing that my mother was getting on the SkyTrain at King George Station and going all the way downtown to Granville and getting off and walking to a hotel and cleaning rooms, right? For rich people, right? And the things she would tell me, the tips, she had a little tip jar, all the coins and things that some people would leave. And till this day, that defines who I am. Whenever my family, me and the kids and my wife are in a hotel, we leave a little note for the housekeeper with our tip. And we say, our grandma, my mom, was a housemaid, and this tip is for you and your family, right? And there's lots of people that don't leave tips.
Do you tell your mom this?
Yeah, like not all the time, but she knows we have done that, right? She knows that's something we think about and care about, and where she comes from, right? And what she's done. It's a cute little thing, and I want the kids to know, right? Like, part of my struggle in life right now is I am the son of a maid and a courier, but my children are the children of a successful lawyer and well-known accountant. Their life is very different. So we talk a lot about how are we going to instill the same values, right? And motivation and work ethic that we have And it's not an easy thing to try to plan for and try to mentor your children, right?
I think it's very difficult in our community as a whole, because so much success has come. And how do you pass on the struggles of the generation before or the 2 generations before onto our kids? And how do we transform and educate them about things that our parents or society in general educated about? Because society in general is less motivational these days than maybe when we were growing up, or maybe the struggles were different at that time.
Yeah, you're so right. Where do people get motivation from now? These like snippets on TikTok or Instagram stories of someone talking about how to motivate you, right? Or are they seeing it around them, right? You know, some motivational speaker saying, these are the top 3 things that I do, or do the cold dunk, or do this diet, and there's all these social media influencers, right? Which is, I don't know why in society we have placed these people on a pedestal, right?
A month ago, the world was coming to an end.
Yeah.
My son was traumatized. Didn't want to sleep at night because he thought whoever's sleeping at midnight is going to not be there in the morning.
Right.
So as I was thinking about this podcast that I wanted to do, I'm so glad I thought of you and you generously accepted. Transformation of knowledge, heritage, and education is key in success of a society. It not only is important in the family structure, but it's also important in the general geopolitical environment we live in. Generally speaking, over the years, I've been feeling that political awareness and political will in democracies is fiddling away. I was looking at some stats the other day. Youth between the age of 18 to 24, only 53% voted in the last federal election, which was a 3% drop than the previous election. And if that same drop happens again, would mean that less than 50% of people, youth people between the age of 18 to 24 are voting in Canada.
That's staggering.
What are your views on it?
Well, you're sharing that stat. What that is telling us is we're hovering around half of a representative population participating, right? And you wonder, what is the reason why that's happening? Why are less people going to the polls? In advance of this podcast, I was trying to do a little bit of research, read some articles. It's interesting what you read. In part, A, you read it, but B, I wanted to put myself into the shoes of an 18 to 24-year-old and think, why would I vote or not vote? Some of the stuff I read was, A, they're not feeling like the politicians are representative of them or their interests. So what does that mean? That means they don't see themselves and their issues being talked about. They don't see the actual politician representing them and their position in the world, their issues such as, say, cost of living or access to jobs, all that kind of stuff, the things they'll care about, right? I think at that age you're not really thinking about healthcare. You're probably healthy, so you're not worried about that, or roads and things like that. But I wonder what they think about. There's another aspect to it, which this one caught me by surprise. So the second reason they're not voting is they find it inconvenient. So I was wondering, what does that mean? That voting day is a day they find it hard to get to the polls? So do we need to revolutionize that? Do we need to get it onto apps and phones and make a big leap so that we have representation? I don't have the answer to that. But one explanation is they don't have the ability, or they feel it inconvenient. Yeah, you and I are gonna laugh at that, because we're gonna say it's one of the most single important days of the year when you have an election to get your vote, counted. But they find it inconvenient. So how do we make it convenient?
How do we change their mindset? My grandma was so happy, and this is when I was in India, and I always tell stories about my grandma because she moved from Canada back to India while our family wanted to move from India to Canada, and she was so happy that we got the right to vote. And I think the struggles, the understanding of those struggles is also a reason why maybe specifically in the immigrant families, the second, third generation kids have less motivation to go out and vote because they haven't precisely fought for it, maybe. My dad wakes up on election days, either it's municipal election or it's federal election or it's provincial elections, and for him it's a day of celebration. He actually has a routine where, he's so happy. He proudly tells everybody, I went and voted. And I think he also understands the difference that he could make. I think life has become so fast for these young adults. The life is so fast paced. They have so much going on. They're trying to figure out their life, their careers, and they feel that they should be getting more support than what they're getting from the governments, and thus they don't feel their vote would make a difference, if it makes sense.
Yeah, I just had an image of your dad, who's such a distinguished gentleman. I could see Uncle G waking up, the breakfast he has, the suit he puts on, the pug, everything is going to be, I'm going out into the world, I'm going to run into people, I'm going to proudly get in that line, make that check on that, voting card, and come home, and it's all this ceremonial day. And if you think even about Uncle G, this is someone who knows about the fights for a vote. Even everyone else, the time that people would put on your Sunday best dress, your suit, a hat, right? Like a nice dressy hat. You can just imagine people, their civic duty and going out and registering their vote. Do people still give it that same level of gravitas, that same level of seriousness, importance? Maybe that's something we need to really reflect on and really urge people, right? That you're not just going in your pajamas and your slides and out and just registering this vote, right? We should be so proud of what we're doing when we're out there. You also bring up a really interesting point about the struggle for a vote. I can openly share that my father treated voting very seriously in our home. So we all went. And he would talk about the struggles for the right to vote for South Asians, particularly in BC, right? That right to vote came in the late 40s, right? And we talk about what struggles occurred for not just South Asians, but people of other ethnic communities, right? The Japanese, the Chinese, Filipinos. There's a lot of struggle for these people. And that is in our generation. You might be looking at a grandparent right now in your home who could not go and register a vote in this country. Your grandma or grandfather may have wanted to, and they would have been rejected at the polling station.
Yeah.
You are not allowed. You are not a Canadian citizen. You are not a member of this population, right? You are the other, right?
So imagine you being 18 to 24 and being told you cannot vote. How would you feel? I would feel betrayed.
Oh, I would feel like, do I even belong to this country? Yeah. Where am I?
Freedom's taken away.
Yeah.
So when we actually don't vote, we give our freedoms that our forefathers fought hard to get for us. We're giving them up. So with this, what do you think of us setting up a organization that can work towards providing educational forums and means for youth to feel that the importance of vote is still meaningful in a democracy?
Well, that sounds incredible. One of the things that I think about, if I was an 18 to 24-year-old, there's all these parties and these names, right? What do they stand for, right? We all actually, even when we're relatively informed about politics, always go remind ourselves about the platform of the party. What are their key issues? What are their key policies that are being proposed, right? And so getting information that helps you understand the parties, understands the leaders, understand the policy behind what they're proposing that they will do that's different, right? That will help them. That's what really gets you to understand in your age cohort what issues matter to you and whether they're being addressed by a particular party. So I think, setting up an organization that helps voters understand, right, is humongous. And then maybe, just you and I talking about it here, some advocacy to make voting easier, whatever that might look like. I don't know the answer to that, right? I think we get the day off. I believe everybody gets the day off. Yeah. So on voting day. So it's not that you're working. That's not a reason to not show up. Then it's maybe you're worried about lineups or transportation or cost to get to the polling station. Maybe those are things that need to be looked at. maybe accessibility, making things go online. We need to enter a world where that the security is such that you can log in, identify yourself as appropriate voter, and vote. We have to head towards that direction, right?
Yeah, I think there could be some political fears around that. I mean, do politicians want high polling?
Interesting. You raise a really interesting question. Do politicians want 18 to 24-year-olds to vote?
And on the same aspect, when I was on the BC Soccer board, there were some honest discussions around diversity in sports and female participation, specifically in leadership, and participation of diverse groups, specifically people of visible minorities. And it comes to that chicken
and egg
debate. What happens first? Should there be young politicians first, or should there be young voters first? And every time that debate came in terms of we should have this much representation, we should mandate this much representation of people of color or females on the PSO board, and I would always debate and say, no, that's not sustainable, because you have to start at the grassroots. You have to go to the clubs. You have to bring more female volunteers. You have to bring more people of visible minorities to volunteer, and then bring them on their boards, then put them to the district boards, and then slowly graduate them to the provincial organization. Similarly, I think the discouragement among youth could be that most of the politicians are not their age, they don't relate to them. So I think, if you be kind enough to come on board with this organization that we're trying to set up, we will empower, educate youth about the power of voting and what it could mean, maybe not while they're in their youth, but maybe when the next generation of 18 to 24s come, some of those in their 18 to 24s now can enter into active politics. Because I think that's another problem that we are facing, is that generally speaking, politicians are mature, older, and don't relate to young people.
Yeah, unless a young person actually attended some political science courses, or got some good courses in high school or university, or just talking to people about what is a democracy, right? Right now, I saw this morning scrolling through my Instagram, a ton of people standing up for the issues that are happening around the world, right, in Palestine, and there's lots of comment about this, right? Lots of people feeling like they're being mini political activists, raising awareness, right? What does it actually feel like to be in an authoritarian state where you are not freely electing your politicians, right? That's what it feels like.
That's another point, similar to how did minorities got a right to vote in Canada, the struggles. I think the struggles of the early 1900s, when there was a struggle to set up democracies across the world and there were authoritarian states, I think people appreciated democracies more, because now it's kind of become a stale thing where there has been no struggle. Democracy is the common theme, and people don't realize. But hey, you can go to states that don't have democracy.
Yeah, or you can have, democracies that are renowned in the world, such as say like the U.S. And look, I am no expert political commentator, but one basic thing we know exists: the U.S. is one of the world's largest democracies, and you might think that they've got it figured out, but certainly we also know this, that there are communities where there are systematic barriers that prevent them from getting to the polls. So they may actually have the right to vote, but to actually get to the polls, there are barriers put in place. There's this concept called gerrymandering, which you've heard about as well, right? Where imagine you lived somewhere where you actually wanted to get to the polling station. Let's imagine you wake up on voting day, like Uncle G's ready in his Sunday's best, but he has to get through multiple police barriers, roadblocks, hurdles, jog 20 kilometers, swim 30 kilometers. Yeah. Like, these are jokes of hurdles and obstacles that are in his way to actually get there. right? When he wants to get there, imagine how laughable that is. And that happens in the US.
That happens.
Yeah.
I think it's evident the last election when so many mail-in ballots came and there was a big uproar about where are these voters coming from, and if it wasn't for COVID,
Yeah.
a lot of that stuff wouldn't have happened. Well, I was in Qatar for the World Cup, and I truly didn't feel I was free.
Imagine that. Describe that a bit.
I went on a 15-day trip. It was supposed to be my dream trip. I had tickets to the 2 semifinals, the third place match, and the World Cup final. Sadly, I left after the first semifinal, knowing that my favorite team is in the final, knowing that the player that I root, Lionel Messi, he was in the final, knowing all that. Just the discrimination towards my wife in that place was so prominent.
Interesting.
That I decided that I don't want to stay in a place where my wife doesn't have freedom to do whatever she wants to do.
Yeah.
And it was very evident. We were at the game and we had some folks from California sitting right next to us, and they got a visit from the Secret Service team telling them that the mother and the daughter are talking too closely to each other. This happened right next to us, and it was as blatant as it could be, and that family was frightened. And I definitely booked my ticket back that night, and I did not want to be there.
You're in an authoritarian state, and you weren't comfortable.
We were there for 2 days. Imagine you living in those countries.
Yeah.
Next steps. What should we do? How do you see some of the things that youth can relate to? Because unless their brain is instigated enough to think it's interesting, how can we get them excited about this?
Well, okay, so obviously this is a podcast, and you and I did not prepare this. We don't have notes, speaking notes. We're just talking, right? Which is great format to have dialogue. So let's actually put ourselves in the minds of an 18 to 20-year-old version or 18 to 24-year-old version of ourselves. The things that we were doing. I was in university. I know you were probably playing a bunch of soccer. You're working. What are your priorities as a young Canadian? Let's say a young British Columbian, right? What are some of your priorities? What are the things you care about? Right now, there's a lot about the cost of food, right? The cost of living.
Inflation.
Interest rates. There's a lot about, will I own a home, right? I keep hearing for young lawyers, oh, do I even really want to be a partner and work that hard? Because even if I work this hard, I'm never going to be able to own my own home anyway. So I'm okay with the salary I make so that I can just like rent and vacation and live an okay life. But I'm not prepared to put in the extra hours to become a partner or to earn more income, because does it even translate into some further success in my life, like home ownership? I know we always refer to home ownership as some level of success, right? Or at least that's what's written to us. So if that list of things is what really matters to 18 to 24-year-olds, because that's what the news is telling us, right? Are there other things that we're not thinking about? I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we have to relate to them. And I think we have to hear them before we can tell them anything. Because when you hear them, I was talking to a young voter just a few minutes before this podcast, and she was pregnant. And I asked her, I said, "You vote?" She goes, "No, never." I said, "Why don't you vote?" She goes, "I don't know much about the political system." So I asked her an interesting question. I said, "How much do you know about giving birth to a baby? You have never done it before.
Right.
Why are you?" She said, "Well, I need to secure my future." So interesting that you say that. Have you ever thought that if you vote, you are participating in securing your future, not for yourself, but also for that baby that you're about to give birth to?
Wow, what a great analogy that you have.
But I think those conversations are important. I think getting youth involved, the first 100 would be the most difficult, and after that they would attract their peers, and I think it's very important to give that time back to make a difference. It's democracies around the world. I think you know that in Australia, if you don't vote, you know that there's a fine. So you have to pay a fine.
Interesting.
But that's forced democracy. So when you force somebody to vote, that cannot be real.
Yeah, I actually think about it. Maybe they'd even vote for someone they don't want or don't like as a way of just sort
Protest.
of being a protest. So are you getting reflective voting, right?
Yeah. So I think we have to really reform the mind of the youth, and really relentlessly give them this message that elections are coming. Provincial elections are coming this year, and federal elections will be coming next year. And we should go out and vote and express ourselves. It takes 30 minutes to go to a polling station. There's no lineups there. It's a fairly easy process. And we will create a forum where you can come and ask questions about why and why not we should vote.
Yeah, one of the things I think about, Gary, and an incredible moment for me, and this relates to US politics, but the fact that the US could have their first black president was a big deal, right, with Barack Obama, right? And it was very clear that what shifted that election was the youth vote. Youth came out in a big way for Barack Obama. They were so active in raising awareness and getting the youth vote out that literally got elected one of the most influential presidents, like in American history, right? And that is so well connected to that youth movement, right?
Yeah, I think the passion went around a person of color, relatively young at that time, and he was able to connect with young people.
Yep.
And regardless of your race, you need to be able to connect with the youth to inspire them to do something.
Absolutely.
And I think we should. You sent me some notes last night. You sent me the article about the history of how the Sikhs got the right to vote. And this is educational material which is hard to find.
Yeah.
So maybe through our organization we can provide that information. We can also speak to adults, older adults, and the obligations and duties that our parents fulfilled to educate us. Our parents today doing that to educate their children about how they should vote. My dad demands that I take a photo of the polling station and send it to him because he does not believe that I would go to vote because I'm so busy. And I think, do we take our voting and our families' voting, or our future citizens that we are raising in our households, are we preparing them to be ready for participation in the political field?
You know what I just thought about with you sharing that story is pride. I feel like these elections that are coming up, we need to start posting voted, right? Like take that photo and have that proud check mark on your Instagram story or wherever it is that voted, because what you're trying to say to the world is I did it. I did the thing that's so important. And when someone else sees that, it will probably trigger that thing for them that, you know what, I need to do that too. Because I know it's not just youth. There's people our age that make excuses, right, for not showing up to the polls. General voter turnout is also not where it needs to be in this country, right? The focus so far we've had was about that age cohort of 18 to 24, right? But general voter turnout is, I believe, generally on the decline as well, right?
Yeah, and I think pride in voting is so important. If you vote for someone, they win, you're proud that your person won. But if your person loses, then you have that fire in your belly for the next 4 years that whatever the reason this person lost, maybe there was you voted the wrong way, or if there were people who didn't vote it, you can inspire more people, and by this we can maybe one day make a difference in the Canadian democracy.
Oh yeah, it's such a beautiful thing. So you may bring up a really good point. Say the way you voted, your party doesn't win. What that actually is telling you is, if you were informed about the platform for each party, if the rest of the country put the other party in, all that's telling you is right now, our beautiful country made up of all these diverse people, we have other priorities that everyone else is interested in, right? Like when the liberal wave came at that point, right? That was the Justin Trudeau, the red wave, right? At that point, the country was saying, we've had enough of the conservatives of that time. Stephen Harper, who was a great prime minister, right? But the wave came because after so many years, the country's will changed.
You also know that youth voted more that year than ever.
So that seems to be another one of those ones, right?
So when you have inspiring politicians that come up through the ranks, and who knows what happens next year?
Another thing I'd love to talk about is, being critical. Garry, given we talked about social media, we know news reporting is not at its greatest integrity of previous generations. We know that right now in the US, there's a initiative to ban TikTok because of China influence and other things. Look, politics, news, media, all of these things, we have to be very critical, right? What do you think about that? What is the message about being critical of what you're hearing?
Yeah, so I'm very active. I am very critical. Sometimes more critical than I should be, but I think we have the freedom of speech, and we have to express it. Governments try their best. I think it's not. This is not a knock on any government. Governments in general, people in power in general, try to quell voices. And I think banning of TikTok is banned in India. TikTok could be banned in US. I think there is some talk about TikTok being banned in Canada. With all these news articles now can no longer be posted on social media. You can't take a news that you like and post it on your Instagram page. They'll just come and say, "Oh, sorry, this content is not allowed." This is it's a big infringement on our rights to express and our rights to speak. And I think we should take. This is the age of social media. Doesn't matter you have a small followership or a big followership. You got to continue to voice your opinion.
Yeah.
Because when you can voice your opinion, you're not free anymore.
One of the things that I often feel is at election time, there's this thing that happens, right? And the way people describe it is the division of society, right? Because the political parties, they tend to exaggerate issues to try to put themselves into different camps. And the US is so notorious for this, right? Because you want to divide society, and they'll divide it along things like racial lines, right? If you're white, rich Republican, right? That's you. If you're poor, black, you're a Democrat, right? They'll do these divisive issues. And every societal issue, they'll divide on party lines. And it's what my recommendation for young people as they look and as we move towards elections, let's say our Canadian elections, is you should look for when there's this division happening, and that's all just to get you to get the clicks, hit your emotions, try to grab you so you do go out and vote because it's something that will bother you, right? There's a lot of religious undertone in elections, right? There's going to be like those Christian values, abortion, and you'll hear a lot about that kind of stuff always in the US and in Canada. So you'll hear these divisive things, right? And that's really to try to capture people to go, oh, that one bothers me, that affects me. Yeah. I'm going to go register this vote simply because I'm a hardcore Christian that believes in the, no abortions, right? So, or the opposite, right? You're someone that believes in autonomy, right? So politicians and the news will do this. And what I think people should be doing is think about that, absolutely reflect on your core values, but try to go beyond that and look at the policies that these parties talk about. And those policies will relate to the things like economics, your jobs, inflation. It'll relate to things like immigration. There's a lot of that happening in the news these days, right? People feeling like close our borders. There's too many international students, immigrants here, right? You'll filter through all this stuff, get to the core of what the values of this country are. This country was built on immigrants, right? From all over around the world.
That's right.
Right? Our population is far too low for our landmass. We are a growing economy. We need people.
Yeah.
Right? So
we need young people.
We need young people. And those same young people are the ones that should be out there talking about what they want their country to look like, right?
Hey, thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks for having me, brother.
It's awesome. So me and Perminder are going to try to make a difference to make this society more politically aware, and hopefully we can inspire youth to vote and do their part. Are you doing your part? If you are, go home and talk to your kids and tell them how important it is to exercise our right to vote. Thank you.
Great advice, my friend.